Hey, welcome back to Monique's Book List. So we are here to film the second part of my top 10 romance novels. Again, I'm going to go ahead and do my disclaimer. For those of you who don't like romance, I understand. But I do. So we're going to talk about it. So we're doing the second half of the top 10. We did the top 5, and now we're going to do the remaining the remaining 5. Now, full disclosure, that doesn't mean that these books are bad. It just means that out of the top 10, out of the books I've read, out of the top 10 I've selected, these just happen to be on the lower half of that spectrum for me. So let's get into it. First, number 6 is an author by the name of Lily Kate. I read 4 of her books. The first book I read was Hangry Girl. And then I read her Minnesota Ice series. Honestly, I didn't really care for the first book. I mean, I shouldn't say I didn't care for it. It just wasn't my favorite. I thought it was just an okay book. I think I gave it 3.5 stars. I don't think I gave it anything to. I don't think I raved about it. I think I said it was a cute book, and it was okay. But I was anyone that knows, you guys probably know by now that when I'm in reading slumps, my go-to is either romance or murder mystery. So at this point, I was in the reading slump, so I went ahead and went with a little more romance, and so I read a few more of her books. I actually read 3 more, part of a series called the Minnesota Ice series. It's about several hockey players that are part of the Minnesota Wild. I think it's the Minnesota Wild. I don't know. My husband likes hockey. I don't. I just know they have a hockey team. It's not the Minnesota Wild. It's actually the Minnesota Ice. That's why it's called the Ice series. Okay, so but I did like her Minnesota Ice series. I thought it was cute. I liked the way um, all the women were introduced. The first book was in that series that I read. I think it's the first book in the series too. It is The Delivery Girl. And you meet the young lady. She works in her father's um, pizza shop. And he asks her to deliver a pizza to this address. And she does. And she hears these people having sex. So she initially was like, I don't know what to do. So she calls back to the restaurant and gets her cousin. Her cousin's like, well, you can come back or you can wait until they're done. So she decides that she's going to wait until they're done. And so when she thinks that they're done, she, rings the doorbell again. And this dude comes to the door with nothing but a towel around his waist. So she assumes it was him. And that's how she's introducing the main character. And I believe his name is Ryan. I believe it. Let me see if I can get that. Yeah. His name is Ryan, and he's a rookie on the ice. He actually wants to be signed to the ice. He actually plays for, I think, like a team in LA. So you're introduced to the characters that way. And on top of that, she's a comedian. So it was really funny how how it all tied in together. Her being a comedian, so yeah, cute romance series. Liked it. Nothing too crazy. There was some sexy time in it, but the sexy time it wasn't too mild. It wasn't too crazy. It was a lot of, it was okay. I mean, it was okay. I don't know where I was going to go the next. All right. So the next, author on my list, her name is Katie Evans. I read 3 books by Katie. The first book I read in her series was called The Tycoon. And the Tycoon story is about a young man who used to be poor and now he's almost a tycoon of New York. And there's this young lady from his past who she's trying to get some business from him, and she knows who he is, but she's afraid of him because they had like almost a summer fling before he went away, and she never really understood why he went away. But he had some family issues, and that's why he went away. So they link back up, and basically, they start, back. Well, first of all, he's giving her a hard time because he's very much about not mixing business with pleasure. He is very business oriented, and she's fucking with his mojo. Like he's like, I'm trying to be professional, but I got feelings for this chick too. So it's interesting how they link back up. And like I said in the last video, for some reason I never remember the girls' names in these books. I just don't. I want to feel bad about it, but I don't. I wish I could, but I don't. The thing about Katie Evans, she's written a whole bunch of books, and like I think she's written a series called the Man Whore series. She's written also books about single presidents. I liked the tycoon, because I think there's like a few. I don't know. I think they're all standalone books, but they kind of cross in between and over and stuff. But overall, her books are okay. Her sexy times are heavy. I enjoyed her sexy times. However, I didn't really enjoy like the dynamics between the men and the women. I noticed that the women always were kind of in need of something, and the dudes were always in the position of power. So I didn't care for that dynamic being constantly in all of her books. Now listen, like I should have said this in the first video. When you read romance, there are 3 tropes that you're gonna normally get. You're gonna get hate to love relationship, insta love, and fake boyfriend or fake it till you make it kind of relationships. So I wasn't really surprised, and there is a lot of damsel in distress in romance. I think there's a 4th one I guess you could go with too, but I wasn't surprised in these novels that that's how the setup is. I wouldn't say I was put off. It was just not my cup of tea. Like after reading the 3rd novel, I just kind of realized that was her thing. It was rich dude kind of begging in need kind of girl. So I didn't like it that much. So we're going to move to my next author. And the next author on my list of romance that I liked, the next person on my list is Emma Chase. I read 3 of Emma's novels. The first one I read was Tangled. I literally skipped most of that book. I read the beginning, and I read the part of the middle, and I read the end. So I considered it a D and F. And then I read her royalty series, and it basically is the same kind of as Katie Evans. It's real like the royalty series. Some random prince from a country that we don't know of likes this girl, and he thinks she's amazing. She's so interesting, and she's poor. Of course, she has to be poor. That is the makeup of a good romance, damsel in distress wise. So you get that, and I just was not a big fan of her books. I read 3. I read 1, Tangled, and I read the 2 in the first of the Royal series. And halfway through the 2nd book in the Royal series, I was just like, yeah, I didn't really enjoy anything about it. I didn't enjoy the sexy time. I didn't enjoy much of it. And that's how I know I was really in a slump, that I was trying to make myself read this book even though I didn't enjoy it. So yeah, so we're gonna go ahead and move on to number 9. Sorry, I'm drinking wine because it has been a long day. We're gonna go on to number 9, and the author in number 9 is an author by the name of MJ Fields. I read 5 of her books, and the first book I read in her series was the Chase book, and the series is called Men of Steel. So the first novel, you meet Chase. He's this tattooed bad boy, got, stereotypes, like straight stereotypes about people who have tattoos. People consider them bad boys. He love them and leave them, kind of thing. That's how it kind of starts off, and then you realize that he not really love them and leave them. He just had really bad relationships, like the girl that he dated before you meet the new girl. And again, I'm bad. I never remember girls' names. The girl that's the main character, before he meets her, the girl he's dating literally had killed herself. So And he also has a child with that girl, and her father, so upset about the fact that she killed herself, refuses to let him have anything to do with the daughter. So it's a little, uh, like it's some power stuff going on there. So he's not really a bad boy. He just has tattoos. Um, Jace has three brothers, so there's four of them, and each of them have their own book, and they're kind of going through their love stories. Now, the first book is not that bad, as far as like the women in these books. Now, I read 5 of her books. The first 4 I read because she has really good sexy time in her books. However, the relationships in these books are disturbing. And what I mean by disturbing is like in the one book about his oldest brother, the girl he winds up dating is technically a prostitute. I don't know, or not a prostitute. She is a kind of like a porn star. I don't know, but not. She's not doing it on purpose. It's because like she was in foster care and she met this guy who pretended like he loved her. The girls in these books are extremely, um, for lack of a better word, damaged. Like they have a lot of baggage. They have a lot of stuff that needs to be healed besides some dude healing it for them. And it was a little off-putting. Now, the 5th book that I read, it was in the it was still by the same author, and it still kind of has Ties to Steal. It was in the Ties to Steal spinoff, and it was about Abe. And he meets this girl by the name of Nikki. And the only reason I remember her name was because it's the same name, kind of the same name from the girl in the proposal. Um, so he meets Nikki, and him and Nikki have a one night stand, and it's spring break, and it's the first time he's taken a vacation in a long time because he works with Chase and his family. They have this huge company, and it's the first time he's a CFO, and it's the first time he takes a vacation, and he meets Nikki. He thinks she's gorgeous. She's not ready to be in a relationship, and of course they sleep together, and she's like, my friends are leaving. I'm going to leave too, even though she technically could stay because she had 5 days left on vacation and her friends were going back early for some reason. So she decided that she would not stay because she didn't think she's like, I'm not ready for this. This dude is too much for me. So she just kind of ghosted him. And come to find out, when she gets back to her hometown, she gets assigned, she's a journalist, she gets assigned to write an article about the Still Corporation, and the only person that agreed to do the interview before he knew who the journalist was Abe, and that's how they get rekindled. And there's a really interesting story about his preferences, about what he enjoys in the bedroom. He's kind of 50 Shades, a little bit of 50 Shades, and it's interesting. However, there's this element of Nikki. Nikki is living in this building, and these random things keep happening, like her lights go out in the middle of the night, and she doesn't know what's going on, and she lives in this very old building, so she goes to the basement to turn on the breaker, and then as she's coming back up from the basement, her male neighbor is standing at the top of the stairs like, oh, I was, looking for you. I had a flashlight. And you find out a little bit about that creepy ass dude. So, yeah, so it was really weird because in the Men of Steel series, all the women they're very damaged. Like, there's a lot of shit going on with these women. And the way that they get into the relationship with the Men of Steel, like the Steel brothers, is disconcerting because like it kind of feels like they use sex and these relationships to heal this brokenness inside of them, and it's really weird, and I didn't like that. And again, if it wasn't because of her sexy times, I wouldn't have read 5 of her damn books. However, Ties to Still series with Abe, there was more balance of like Nikki having a pretty sound family. It was more to her a little more substance. She wasn't like in need of some real bad therapy. So I enjoyed that book. But I don't think I'm going to read any more of MJ Fields' books. I think I got a real good feel of her. So last on my list, and to be fair, I will openly admit, I think this is the most books I've read by any author in any genre that I've ever read. And I would like to say in my defense, it is because of the sexy times and the way that they talk in these books that which made me decide to continue to listen/read these books. The name of the author is Megan March. Megan March, I have read. I don't even know. I don't feel embarrassed about reading romance novels. I feel embarrassed about reading 13 books of an author who I don't consider my favorite author in this genre, which is weird, right? So I read 13 books by her. The first book I read by her was called Real Dirty. It is a duet. It's two books in that series. She has a total of 29 books in this world that she created. They all cross over. So I read 13. I read quite a few of her duets. She had quite a few. She had she had Real Dirty, Good Man. There was quite a few, and they all kind of like cross over somehow. Like one, like in the Real Dirty book, you meet Boom Thrasher, and the girl he's pursuing. I'm gonna call her Jennifer, and then you realize like he has this really fancy car that from the Real Men series, the mechanic in the Real Men series is introduced to you because he actually fixed Boone's car in the Real Dirty series. So, okay, before I get you confused, basically all of her books cross over in some form or fashion. She has a lot of books, and the thing that I liked about her books, as I said before, was the smutty parts of her book. The way the men talk in this book. Ooh. I've never been embarrassed when I've read smut before until I read her books. I literally was like, I listened actually to the Real Dirty duet, and the male author, or the male narrator, sorry, the male narrator of that book, his name is Sebastian York. This man has an amazing voice. Like, his voice is amazing. And he was saying the things that she wrote for Boone to say to Jennifer. And yeah. Yeah, so again, I read 13 of her books. I listened to most of them, all 13. No, I did. I listened to all 13 of them. They were all narrated by the same man, so I was kind of like, why not listen to his voice again? Anyways, so those were the highlights of her books. The things I did not like about her book, which is the reason why she's number 10 and not higher, is she openly admits she's very proud of the fact that she writes a lot of alpha male, she writes a lot of alpha male inspired smut/romance novels. And I'm okay with that. I don't think that all masculinity is toxic. I think that some of it is. I think some of it is just masculinity. It's just who they are. I know a lot of masculine men, and they don't degrade or believe that women are less than because they're masculine. They don't actually say things like that was said in this book, where all the men in every book that I listened to declared that the women were theirs, like they were possessions. And they said things like, nobody's going to touch my woman. And I don't know, I think it was possession. It wasn't like nobody's going to touch someone I care about. It was more like, she is my possession and you're not going to touch my possession. And that was very much, and every one of the books, one of the men at some point was like, she's mine. And it was very like third grade-ish, like when you're on the playground and, you know, you're playing with something and you're like, it's mine. So I didn't like that about her books. And yeah, like in the dynamics between the men and the women, it was a lot of damsel in distress dynamic. Like the dudes always had all the answers for the women. Even the dude who made less, who, you know, didn't have as nice a job, he still was the answer that she needed. He had all the answers for her, and he was this nice, good country guy. And at that point, I think I almost drank this whole entire glass of wine. Messing with messing with Megan. But yeah, so would I suggest any of her books? I would just warn you that there's a lot of macho-ness in these books. And if you're not interested in that, you might not want to read her books. But if you're interested in sexy time, that's going to make you a little red in the face, even if you're black, I say go for it. Although she's not my favorite author out of the top 10. That's so weird. Anyway, so those are my top 10.